Kentucky's Cason Wallace was one of the best freshmen in the country and proved himself as an elite defensive guard prospect, even through some injuries. He always seemed to make a timely play on both ends of the floor, and though he still has some questions to answer offensively, he's one of the prospects I'm most confident in contributing at a high level in the NBA and should end up a lottery pick. Cason was excellent defensively in a number of ways, but we'll start with what he did off the ball or with his help defense, where he was nothing short of fantastic and legitimately one of the best young guys I've seen in this area. Now obviously the steals and deflections and being in the passing lane will always stand out when watching, and his help positioning was really good. But the most impressive stuff to me was his rotations and instincts and help to do pretty much everything. We're talking tagging the roller and closing out effectively, denying the ball and chasing guys around screens, or defending at the nail and creating turnovers. All of that was great, and he would also defend multiple actions with ease and make these sort of split-second decisions right where he was supposed to be that were crazy to watch. Now none of this was flawless, but stepping to the college level and being this good at some of the most difficult stuff in basketball was again super impressive.
Top for Cooper, and Taylor pushes it. Here's Dennis.
Block. Patience to throw the perfect long pass on the other. Watson kicks out strong for Meshack. Off the hesitation, nearly.
Doubled, Toppin, inside, intercepted. It's picked off by Wallace.
Jimmy Dykes.
So is most of America.
There's a steal by Wallace. Averages better than 2 steals per game. Ahead to Toppin.
High school in the state of Maryland. 4-2 lead for Kentucky.
This can be so busy, makes it tough defensively.
Taking on Senegal.
Can't get into the post.
I like that.
16, Wallace has 15. Nice hands again. From a coaching standpoint, when you finally throw one in, the jubilation.
Right now, and we'll see if anybody steps into that starring role. Walker turns it over.
Only loss was in overtime.
On the ball, he's a very good lateral mover. He does a great job of mirroring players and making things difficult out on the perimeter, and his ability to shift his weight, absorb contact through his chest, and maintain balance is up there with pretty much anyone that you want to name. And with all that, he has the ability to guard up and hold his own. Now he's not the longest with just a +2 wingspan, but those other attributes make him someone I think will spend time guarding 1 through 3 and switching on everyone but centers for moments. I always came away impressed with his ability to recover, knowing when to step slide and when to turn. He used a cross step to cut off angles and wall off drives. And then of course, just in his hands and overall physicality. And being able to come up with some strips and poke aways, things of that nature, much of which he did pretty disrespectfully.
Players in the SEC just playing so much smarter. Alabama, Oklahoma, of course, Oklahoma.
Moore's been active, 5 to shoot. Against the taller Wallace.
He needs to take those pull-up jumpers.
Council. Here's Lofton, poked away by Wallace, and elite.
Has the offensive rebound. Green trying to go up and taken away by Wallace with the defense there. The Dan was just talking about Reeves, 3, bullseye.
Well, you want to make them move a little bit on the defensive end.
Against that side pressure of Howard's defense. Loose ball, Cason Wallace. Black goes baseline, loses it.
And back comes Michigan State. And look at the push by Hogard, and then dribbled it off.
His screen navigation definitely had a ton of great moments, getting skinny, dipping his shoulder, anticipating the screen, but there were some questionable, maybe a bit undisciplined decisions going under or trying to cheat and get back into play, and it burned him. I do think he was impressive here for the most part and did a great job of switching and peeling and getting back into play when he did get caught up, but he can still patch some things up.
Arkansas's defense to start the second half has been on point.
These two great programs have met either in this event or when the champions clash it.
I call that a cam line. He does that all the time.
Also has a steal.
Now to sum it up, he has all the attributes to be a game-changing type of defender on a night-to-night basis for what he can do both on and off the ball, the way he's able to guard multiple positions, make life tough out on the perimeter, and just finding a way to make a play, whether that be with his hands, being in the right spot on the rotation, or cleaning up somebody's shot on a chase down. It's all there.
What a good pass that time from Wallace. Here's Davis ahead of the field. And Wallace with the Kentucky turnover. Wow.
Lead here with Rupp. Loose ball off.
That was a three. He's short. Wallace playing a Cats uniform last year, but he's making the most of his debut. Bam! Oh my!
Now offensively, Cason was solid in a lot of areas, but I liked what he did as a passer and playmaker, and this of course shined more as the ball was in his hands with Xavier Wheeler out. He showed he could make the basic reads out of that high pick and roll. He had his eyes up in transition. He made consistent entry passes to Oscar Tshiebwe in the middle, and outside of a handful of games, he did a pretty good job of taking care of the ball as well. Now I don't know if he'll be a real primary guy for other reasons that we'll talk about, but just being able to make those basic reads, be that secondary playmaker, and make a play against a shifted defense, that's all stuff well within reason to expect from him in the future.
Shovel it inside. For Bates after a couple of free throws. And speed and a flush.
Long rebound back out to the Cats. Did not hit the rim. Shot clock doesn't reset. Doesn't matter.
Wallace drives. No look out to Reeves for three.
In the half court, they've not been as efficient, but when they're getting out in transition.
So far hasn't found his shot.
That's a tough one he took there.
Calipari has urged him to shoot it. Wallace dumped down. Tshiebwe muscles it.
In terms of potential Final Four teams in the conference, I would say Arkansas.
Deal it was. Wheeler, great pass from Wallace.
Anytime there's a turnover, missed shot, Kansas excellent in transition.
Boy, look at Kentucky getting.
Now it's going to be about how much he can get there, and we'll touch on that in a second, but he finished over 60% of his attempts both total and in the half court, most of which were unassisted. He used some crafty extended finishes, same hand, same foot, and even through contact at times. So again, a lot of this is going to be about how much he can get there, but the rate that he converted is reason for optimism.
The drive. Got my abacus and I left my globe back in the hotel. Left hand, Wallace. Oh my God. Beautiful. Wallace gets one for his defensive prowess. He's locked in here on Wallace. Wallace leans in, gets it to go, and a foul.
Now moving on to the improvement areas, the biggest question with Cason's game, and we hinted at it earlier, is in his self-creation, his driving ability, and what that means for his role at the next level. Now, there's a lot of pieces and factors to this. Some areas are further along than others, so it's important to keep that nuance in mind, and we'll try to show that. But he's not the most creative, fluid, or full of counters in terms of ball handling. He hasn't been a guy who will really break somebody down off the dribble or create separation and good shots for himself in several parts of the floor. He was often a bit hesitant and passive as a driver and just wasn't able to consistently get a bunch of paint touches or draw the defense on his own, and it showed in his overall rim attempts and free throw rate. We also saw him get cut off on drives, resulting in some turnovers and tough shots. Now with that specifically, it would be unfair to not mention the context of playing with the center in the paint for most of the time, a 4-man who wouldn't shoot and was in the short corner for periods, and a streaky shooting 3-man as well, so that contributed to the driving lanes, but there were also many times he just couldn't take advantage for a number of reasons.
First action of the season with the Wildcats.
And it was really a sad story.
Game is a fallible game. The spin, the speed, the ball handling ability for a kid his size. As popular as Zags ever with Adam Morrison and Rony Turner.
But you wonder if the three-point shooting can be fool's gold at times.
The ball.
Wallace again driving. McCullough knocks it away, but
Intended for Frederick. Wallace with a mismatch. Good hands.
Hands deflected away. Buffkin. Now he steals the ball and he drives on.
You know, we give up these runs and then we don't answer. Wallace is ankle of his is bothering him. Wallace with the left. That's no good. In the flow.
Nice blow by. They call it outside.
Bit of a fake. Aquinda looked like he was going with Wallace just laid
Got his first two this afternoon. Wallace the other way.
Now, he wasn't great here just yet, but I do think he deserves some real credit for getting to the mid-range pull-up and floater often in the pick and roll. There have been a handful of guards in this and previous classes who can't take them cleanly, let alone make them, and he did it fairly consistently. So it's a work in progress still, but I thought he was solid in this aspect.
Wallace the fade away, and he got it.
Wallace, his man flew by him and he knocked it.
Tremendous.
Cason Wallace with the jump.
8-0 run for Arkansas. So you put your one down and yeah.
Here's Wallace.
Jordan Walsh with a half-2 launch.
Wallace pulls in terms of percentage. Little floater. 17, I should say, with the assist, so they're very good. Push shot.
To tie it together, I think he most easily fits in that secondary type of role, attacking closeouts against shifted defenses, but also initiating offense when necessary and running a pick and roll just fine. But the primary creator stuff is a tougher sell. I wouldn't say that he's incapable of making a leap, and maybe it'll look drastically different away from Kentucky, but based on even his high school stuff, I think this is more of his sweet spot, and that's still one that he can have a ton of success in.
Pull-up jumper, silky.
Tennessee at 18 offensive rebounds.
Is in with a couple freshmen playing catch. And Wallace will watch from
13 offensive rebounds for the Cats. Shot clock at 3. Now 2. Wallace.
The three-point shooting was a big question mark for him coming into the year, and even though he finished at a decent 34-35%, I still would buy his shot long term, and I think he was actually really good for the first 2/3 of the season. He's still got to be more consistent, shoot it with a little more confidence and volume, because with the questions in the creation that we talked about, this is going to be key in him making a consistent impact offensively. You know, just being respectable here, making teams pay for leaving him open and drawing a closeout will be huge for him. But again, I think there's enough reason to be on the side of this being a potential strength, or at least a non-question early on in his career.
Rebounds. Wallace for 3. Good. Yesterday, right? Run that field goal team out there, kick that thing for a game winner. Forward to his fine work throughout this season on the SEC network.
It's hard for me to see a scenario where Cason doesn't at least become a contributor, and at his best I think he's somewhere in that borderline all-star type of range and is a perennial all-defense candidate. And then what we get from him in terms of shooting and creation will really dictate that level he reaches as an overall player. Now, as for best and most realistic fit, I think the Wizards, Jazz, and Raptors headline that. The Rockets do as well, though they'll hope to have a pick far out of his range, but I do love what he could bring to all of those situations. Now, I was hesitant to compare him to Drew Holiday, but there's a lot there between the two of them, obviously defensively, statistically coming out of college, and then some of the similarities they have offensively. I do think Drew was a little more athletic and creative with the ball even in high school, and you watch him in New Orleans and Philly, and it's just a little bit different, but the pieces are there. And there's elements of last year's Defensive Player of the Year Marcus Smart in there with Cason as well.
Watch this play. Jaylen Brown knocks it free. Smart first to the floor. There you go.
Smart goes around the world. Oh, a little bit of
Stolen. Inexcusable play.
Though he has some questions and things he'll need to work on to ultimately reach his ceiling offensively, he's an elite defender who is solid at a lot of things, can complement in many ways, and just makes far too many winning plays to be sitting in that green room for too long on draft night, and he should have an impactful career ahead of him.